It's October the 29th, 2019. This is 508, a show about Worcester. I'm Mike Benedetti. This is Brendan Melican. Hi,
How's it going?
Brendan. How are you doing?
Well, thank you for having me back, Mike.
It's exciting. We're using a little bit of new technology on the show today. We're using some new firmware as well. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, this is 508, and this is a show where we talk about Worcester. And even though we are sometimes idiots, we try to just talk about the city of Worcester as though the person watching was not an idiot, which
Yeah.
is, I think, still a little unique in Worcester media.
The people talking being idiots or the people watching?
I was listening to I was doing I don't remember. Oh, I was in a Lyft car the other day, and the dude was listening to NPR, and it was the first time I listened to NPR in a while,
Mm,
and I was really amazed by the sort of unique brand of condescension that NPR brings to its
yeah.
stuff. Like still do feel like every radio station talks down to its viewers. NPR, you think NPR viewer that maybe it's not talking down to you. That's just because you have the Stockholm syndrome.
Hmm.
Whenever you listen to it fresh, you're just like, I can't believe this.
This exists.
I can't
Yeah.
believe how much these people think that
Which
their
is
viewers are
is
children.
precisely why so many people hate NPR, right? I mean, and a lot of it is broken up unfortunately, along political divide, which really
Yes.
doesn't make much sense. What it really comes down to is the condescending tone.
Yes, yes. I mean, so we shouldn't talk about this too much because then we're gonna get into Ira Glass, and then it's just gonna get out of hand. First, let's round up the headlines this week with Worcester in 60 seconds. Speaking of the end of Worcester institutions, longtime school committee member Brian O'Connell has died. A woman committed suicide by jumping off the Telegram and Gazette building. A woman was charged with stabbing a man to death. According to a report from the Warren Group, Worcester County single family home prices were up 4% year over year in September, and condo prices were down 2%. In federal crime news, first, an accountant operating out of the Midtown Mall pled guilty to one count of filing a false tax return. The feds allege he filed a bunch of false tax returns and got $1 million in phony tax refunds. Second, a Worcester man was charged with smuggling 4 endangered turtles from China, specifically black breasted leaf turtles. And finally, in local crime news, 5 people were arrested in a beer brawl at the beer garden. And that's the news this week. Crime and death. Hi, Brandon.
That I feel like it was a couple months ago we were talking about someone maybe down in South Worcester County, Dudley, who was doing like mortgage fraud.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and we were trying to figure out like how does one actually sell something they
This
don't
was
own
and
on paper?
this was somebody who had been arrested for mortgage fraud 10 years ago,
Yeah,
20 years ago.
still at it. The accountant thing, it strikes me as something similar. That like there were some really good grifts out there that never crossed my mind. I don't know if it was good, maybe halfway decent parenting led me to a point in my life where like I can't even comprehend the idea of I'm gonna go to school to be an accountant.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to come up with a bunch of fake clients, and I'm going to defraud the federal government to the tune of millions of dollars. And this is going to be a great lifestyle for me.
I don't even
That's
know how much these were fake clients and how much some of these were real actual clients that
well, I'm sure
just
they're real
were
people
in on it.
somewhere, but it's yeah, I don't know. I'm not a good grifter, Mike. I'm going to stick. My grift is going to end up being a cult. I feel at some point in time. I'm going to stick with that because I think it's a low bar for entry. It doesn't require any level of advanced education, and no real firm understanding of how big systems and institutions work. That's all I got.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Well,
And turtles. Who would think that
yeah. Hey,
this is not the city to be messing with endangered turtles? That you
yeah.
might as well have gone and urinated on Turtle Boy, right? Like that would have been a safer move for you. And
I'm surprised.
smuggling
I'm surprised not to have seen more outrage about that. Definitely the brawl. I've seen a lot of outrage about, not the turtles so
the
much.
turtles. I mean, that's yeah. This is not the town, man.
Well, this week we could file this under post-Catholic Worcester and post-Christian America. A Pew Research Center study found that the number of adult Americans identifying as Christians, a group which includes myself but not yourself, went from 77% a decade ago to 65% this year.
Mm.
And Protestants have seen a 16% decline, Catholics a 15% decline, and the younger generation is not into this stuff at all.
Mm.
If we compare our people, the Generation Xers, who were born 65 to 1980, with millennials who were born between 81 and 96, Generation X is 67% Christian, millennials are 49% Christian.
Right.
That is a gigantic difference.
It is. It's you know what was I found really interesting about it was the spin on this Pew Research poll
Okay.
that I found fascinating because there was so much editorial and discussion around the idea that like millennials are not going to be, and you can tell they were all written by boomers, but they were basically stories and editorials that were written about millennials saying, if you don't get your religion, you're never going to be viable in terms of like a voting bloc, or you're going to destroy democracy. It was such an old timey take on the dissipation of religion
Hmm.
as like as a meaningful factor in public life, right? Like we're at the point now where I think I look at it in terms of, is Oprah Winfrey still on the air?
In some respects.
Yeah, so like I'm sure our audience is probably diminished over the years, right? But you would never identify like Oprah Winfrey's audience diminishing over the years from once being the most popular television program in the world as like a sure sign that the foundation of the United States is crumbling. Like
Yes.
somehow this shift that like young people are doing other stuff, like
Oprah's show is not 2,000 years old.
yeah, well, and
In
this is true.
contrast,
That
though.
yeah, no, that's fair. But it's not like the wheels are falling off the bus, right? Like we could also go through any other number of studies showing that like violence is down in the United States, and we obviously wouldn't draw a correlation between the decrease in interest in religion
Yes.
and in a decrease in violent crime. But it is safe to say that if fewer and fewer people who are at peak violence age are not going to church, and you're not seeing those numbers skyrocketing, then maybe there's an argument to be made that morality and ethics are not as tied to faith as people once liked to force us to believe they were.
Yes, I would say. I mean, the fact that this younger demographic is also a demographic which I would say compared to our demo at their age, less violent, less
Yeah,
sex, less drugs,
right.
is sort of not what you would expect from a much less Christian group of
That's all I'm
people.
getting at. Is like if religion across the board is seeing a decrease in interest, and this is not like we're kind of the outlier as a nation in terms of Western or developed nations in terms of how long it's taken us to like start seeing a massive decline in participation in
Yes,
religion. Right, like most of
yes.
Europe walked away a long time ago. It's
Mhm.
I, yeah. I mean, I feel like there is a genuine fear from a much older generation that if these young kids don't go to church, like the wheels are there's gonna be fires in the streets, cats and dogs, like who knows? Like everything is gonna go sideways. No, it actually seems kind of boring. It seems like, if the kids stop
Yeah.
going to church and, again, violent crime goes down, they're not drinking anymore. They'd like to sit home quietly and read and play video games.
The takes that I've seen, I like that we're just summarizing takes. This is the right way to do it. Have not been so much about religion being the foundation of Western society or whatever. I feel like maybe the takes that I've seen are from people who already believe that and already assume the reader believes that. But they're takes that are looking more at like at what point do you hit a real inflection point, a real phase change?
Hmm.
Because whenever your nation is whatever it was for our grandparents, 80% Christian, 90% Christian, like there's a real incentive for you to be Christian.
Sure.
It's like you want to get a job, you want to get married, just be Christian. You want to have like a life philosophy, and you're lazy, be Christian. These
Hmm.
things it'll all be done for you. It's all part of the deal. And that I mean, like obviously, like every American president more or less has professed Christianity,
Sure.
including the current one.
Yeah.
Most of them who were not Christian were at least interested in Christianity,
Hmm.
unlike the current one. But I mean, I think we can very much imagine that if not in this election, the next presidential election, you have a president who's like, nah,
Yeah.
I'm spiritual but not religious,
Yeah.
or whatever.
I do yoga, get some crystals,
Yeah,
whatever. It's
exactly,
fine. Yeah.
exactly, man. Like yeah, that like at some point, and as we're again, like this generation below us is half Christian by the time they become an adults. The Gen Zers who know what their level is going to be probably much lower. I mean, at some point you hit the point where it's like, well, actually, and I think that some people live in areas where this is true, where it's like actually being a Christian makes it harder to get married, makes
Mm.
it harder to socialize, makes it harder to get involved in these different activities
Yeah.
because you're just a weirdo, and people look down on you for doing that. And like, uh, you know, like I've mentioned many a time, like I grew up in an area where Catholicism was not the majority religion. Definitely
Yeah.
Christianity was the majority religion, but it was like all Pentecostals and Southern
Sure.
Baptists who were my experience super friendly, but institutionally not that friendly to Catholicism. So I basically grew up in an area where I felt like I was a minority religion. I thought it went okay.
Yeah.
Christianity also, sort of coming up from its roots, as the underdog, like being Christian as an underdog and as a minority religion, in some ways feels way, way truer to the roots and the core of the faith
Yeah.
than like everybody's a Christian and I'm lazy, so I'll be a Christian.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that that's where that it, to the extent that we're definitely going to see turmoil, that's where you're going to see turmoil. I mean, you're already seeing it now, right? Where you have like, uh, like gigantic fights over like, can you say homosexuality is bad from
Hmm.
generations where it's like everybody thinks this, even almost the
Sure.
fringiest people think it's bad. To suddenly it's like maybe you can't even say it's bad. Like, what are the limits of like what are the limits we're going to put on Christianity? And
Hmm.
this is something where when I was a kid and they were getting rid of prayer in schools and whatever, people were like, "Oh, the sky is falling."
Yeah.
For Christians, and I don't think it really was. But now I think that for some denominations or some flavors of Christianity, absolutely. Like you're getting very close to the point where being part of a religion that thinks homosexuality is bad will just be
Yeah, but I think
cracked down on.
there's also something you said too, and
I don't mean to talk about that so much, but
no, no, but the two things that I wanted to one that you mentioned earlier that I do think is actually wildly important that we take for granted. I even took it for granted. Is the social aspect, right? So I growing up in Worcester, I grew up Catholic, went to Christ the King. Christ the King Church was very much the epicenter of my social network as a kid, right?
yeah,
Like most of my friends, also went to that church. Like most of the kids I played like little league with and whatnot. It was something you almost took for granted that you were
yeah,
at least one day a week outside of school going to see these people. And it spread from there. Now we didn't with my son introduce him really other than outside of weddings and funerals. Didn't really introduce him to the formalities of church, and that was genuinely a concern of mine when he was younger that he was going to miss that sort of bonding outside of school
yeah,
social aspect of things. I actually think there's something to that. Like I think my son turned out okay, but who knows? Maybe there could be years of therapy to come on that front because we didn't go to church. But that's something that with a massive drop off of participation, especially when it comes to going to church. Um, Lining up with again like something I think an older generation, even our generation, might have a hard time fully embracing that a heavier reliance upon like social media as a way to network.
yes,
You're removing one more of those like third spaces that you're actually
yes,
dealing with real humans from the mix. That's something that I think could lend itself to being a little weird, right? Like it is a
yeah,
and
and
I don't. But again, I would also take another level and say, man, wouldn't it be great if, as like a city, we just had like all these neighborhood places where like one day a week, like everyone from the neighborhood just showed up and like you hung out for a while and
uh,
maybe like somebody would like tell a story or like I don't know, like
yeah,
would say, hey, like don't be jerks like for a while and then afterwards you might get some coffee and hang out and just chat with your neighbors that you don't see too often because everyone's so busy. Like we could actually do that without the religious aspect of things, which would be nice because I kind of like
yeah.
the human interaction side of things, but
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
an old
yeah,
guy.
and that's where I have mixed feelings about the theory that Western civilization will collapse without Christianity undergirding it. But I don't have mixed feelings about the idea that Christianity has been doing lots of jobs, and that over and above your belief in the truth in Christianity, Christianity has been doing lots of jobs socially, and that when it goes away, there's nothing
Yeah,
replacing that. There's no atheist church.
right.
I mean,
That's what I
there
mean.
is Unitarianism, but that's
Yeah,
not
I know, but come
doesn't
on.
really do the
Yeah.
same job.
Well, that's another
Um,
thing though too that I think is important as well. That, and I don't know. I read chunks of this study, but one of the things I would be curious about is when you get to really young generations. Like
mhm,
when I decided that Catholicism didn't work for me, I was
yes,
late teens, but I was also like that edgy sort of like time in your life where like you're gonna rebel against everything. So like I kind of took a hard line, like I'm an atheist, sort of like as I get older. Like the word atheism makes me cringe, right? Like
yeah,
I love the word agnostic and use it in just about any framework that I can find an excuse to use it in because when we joke on the show, or at least I joke on the show, like I'm an idiot and I have no idea what I'm talking about. Like from my personal perspective, I'm being very genuine. Like there's a lot for me to learn out there, and I'm not going to be so bold in my 40s to say I got this one figured out. Especially when it comes to the mysteries of the universe or the mysteries of faith. Frame it however you want to, right? Like I'm not going to be that guy. So like agnostic, that works for me. I'm just going to hedge my bets and, not show up on Sundays. But trust me, I'm doing pretty much everything that you taught me to do for those first 17 years of my life, and it's working out okay. That is also something that I would be curious to see. I hope we're not seeing like a wave coming up behind us of folks that are like, getting rebellious about this one thing and are going to carry like a hardline atheism into the public sphere. Because that is something that I think. I mean, if you're already exhausted by the war on Christmas trope, I mean, oh please, just imagine
You
what that's
actually
going to
could have a
sound
real
like.
war on Christmas. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
or wars at Christmas. Yeah, no, it just we don't need that. It's
You know, what you're talking about, I'll just say one more thing and then I'm happy to
move on.
actually I have a legitimate
Yeah.
thing on the same topic that people will be interested to hear. So don't stop listening just because I'm going to say something boring now. Um uh like I think that one thing that makes me think that you're not going to see some sort of bizarre social phenomenon like churches figuring out how to evangelize against this social tendency, and we're suddenly going to see a great re-whatevering,
Hmm.
uh, and a big boom in Christianity. Is that like I do think that well, at least when you look at it on paper, it is mostly not people being who are like, well, now I'm atheist. That's still a pretty small
Right.
percentage. It's the people who are like, I'm spiritual but not religious, or I just don't care.
Yeah.
And like Christianity has historically been great at evangelizing against or in a context of some kind of religion, right?
Hmm.
They come in and they're like, what are you guys? You guys believe in some kind of animism? Great. You guys believe in Shintoism? You guys believe in Buddhism? Great. We can argue with that. We can work with that, and we can push back against that, and we can convince you why our thing is better than
Yeah.
Buddhism or whatever.
Right.
Um, and actually, I think that there's a whole school of thought, for example, around some kinds of Southeast Asian Buddhism, like especially Burmese Buddhism, that in some weird ways in the late 19th century they developed in uh, in that environment of being evangelized against. So like, for example, Methodist ministers coming in and arguing against that meant that suddenly there were a bunch of concerns that they previously were not that interested in, that they now had to have answers about, and now they came up with the answers about them, and now they were more about like those concerns. Suddenly, they were not going to be Methodist, but that it sort of
Yeah.
distorted the development of Buddhism in some of these areas in a weird way. Um, but yeah, I think I think that the I don't care is hard for Christianity at least to evangelize against.
Oh,
Like
totally.
I'm not like what happens when you die? Well, you're just
Yeah.
not there.
Yeah.
I probably.
It's hard to
Well, isn't
argue
that
against
terrible?
meh.
Well, I don't know, but I guess whatever. It's
Yeah.
probably terrible, but what am I going to do?
But yes, and again, so for me, the concerns are really they do frame around that social aspect of things. And again, saying to someone who doesn't go, you know what we should do? Because I kind of mentioned like, wouldn't it be great if we had like neighborhood organizations? Are you familiar with Kanye West and his Sunday service?
No, I'm not.
So
I'm aware of Kanye.
yeah, so Kanye West does this thing called Sunday Service, which is basic. So personally, I feel like Kanye West is starting a cult, and people, but he's a
Hmm.
devoutly religious person, and he runs this like weekly, like it's like a revival, right? Like it's music, and it's like, but it's a lot of gospel stuff, and it's all framed around around religion, but it's also like it's a pop culture show. It's like a hip hop show, and it's like the reason I'm joking, I mean, I guess I'm not joking. It seems cult like is because lots of people go because there's a good possibility you're going to get a free pair of Yeezy Boosts out of it, and like that's a.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, if someone's offering you a pair of $500 shoes, and like you got the hook in. I mean, Scientology offers far less than that, and look at the number of followers they have.
Yes, yes.
But maybe that's what people in Worcester, man. If you're looking for something to do and you really want to wake up the city, like that's the model, right? Like let's just start getting groups of people together on Sundays in various neighborhoods, and maybe some neighborhoods it's going to be like a weed thing. Some neighborhoods we're gonna start drinking early. Like some of us, we're just gonna get together and watch the Patriots or whatever. But like a great replacement that you could act for that social aspect that you
Yeah.
could do so easily would just be putting together something a little bit more exciting than church, and start getting your neighbors together and hang out because
There
you
it is.
should.
There it is, Worcester. Brendan's new religion. You
Yeah,
should definitely do
I'm
it.
I told you the cult is the one grift I have going for me. This is
So MIT economics grad student Tamar Ostrom posted a blurb on the in progress section of her website that by itself has gotten a lot of attention. And this is the sort of aggravating thing is there's literally no paper in this. This is just her posting on the web like, this is a paper that I'm working on. And there's no links, there's no information. But this is amazing. I'll read the whole thing because it's short. Opium for the Masses: The Effect of Declining Religiosity on Drug Poisonings, Suicides, and Alcohol Abuse. Abstract. Drug poisonings, opioid overdoses, suicides, and alcoholic liver disease mortality have all increased dramatically in the past 2 decades. A potential factor in this crisis of, quote, deaths of despair is declining community ties and social cohesion. To test this hypothesis, I assessed the causal impact of declining religiosity on opioid deaths, instrumenting for religiosity with the Catholic sex abuse scandal. First, I document that opioid deaths and religiosity are strongly negatively correlated across counties, which would mean that,
Hmm.
yeah, that if you got if a lot of people in your county seem to be religious, the more religious, the less opioid deaths you're going to have in your county. Then I find an 8% increase. I find that an 8% increase in religious employment, equivalent to the decrease observed since the height of the Catholic sex abuse scandal, would increase opioid deaths by 4.8 per 100,000, approximately a third of the current opioid epidemic. The effects of religiosity are concentrated in areas with higher Catholic rates before the scandal. In contrast, I find no evidence that religiosity affects other drug deaths, suicides, or mortality due to alcoholic liver disease.
Yeah.
Um, this is both sort of, I mean, this is fascinating, Eight Ways a Sunday, and also it's sort of darkly hilarious because of the idea of religion being the opium of the people, and her saying, like, yeah, like basically the one death of despair that we do see correlated with religiousness is opioid
And
overdose.
I think there probably is something to extrapolate from that, again, along the lines of, yeah, we're becoming a much more lonely and isolated society, and especially older demographics, where it's like easy to get wrapped up in work and in life that already is pulling you away from any sort of social network that you once had and probably took for granted. Um, Again, if the one day a week that you have to actually see everyone in your neighborhood is like going to church or going to mass or whatever, like, uh, yeah, I mean, you could see how that you just pulled a big chunk of people's social lives out of the mix. I would, I think you'd have to be careful to make the argument that religion is the reason, like lack of religion leads to suicide. No, like
Or that there's other substitutes for religion that could work. It's just that religion is
has
going
been
away
that one.
without a
Yeah.
substitute.
And religion had been that big one for, I think,
Yeah.
a significant portion of the United States. And yeah, we do. I do think we need to come up with. Doesn't have to be my cult. Doesn't have to be Kanye's cult. But there does need to be a replacement for that. And it's I mean, I'll say this myself. And please, this is not a cry for help thing. But like, I get that sort of like what people always talk about with like getting older and like the loneliness that comes into play, right? Like your friends that you grew up with just don't have the time, and everyone's got kids, everyone's working. Like when you come into the store and there's a handful of other people that come in, like I drop everything I'm doing to come down and talk for a couple minutes because that's it's really nice, right?
Mhm.
Like, and I actually it's something that always bothers me is that I have that luxury, right, of like of having like control of my time and my space. So when
Yeah.
somebody comes in and I think, oh, there's a great opportunity to have a conversation, like I can actually do that. It really bums me out that there are a lot of people that don't have that, and I feel it is one of those areas that we're very very uncomfortable talking about in this country. That a lot of whether it be suicide rates or rates of addiction, alcoholism, and whatnot, they do line very, very much with the idea of loneliness and isolation, and that shouldn't be rocket surgery to figure out. And again, to the point of the paper or the paper in process, that would seem to be an obvious hole that is missing from the logic behind like, hey, this religion thing, it's just not for me. But
Yeah. Well, Brendan, Michael, to get to probably the opposite of religion, something
yes,
which definitely increase deaths of despair, the Worcester municipal elections that are coming up 1 week from
ugh.
now. Um, I'll say this: people are actually campaigning about property taxes this year,
Mm.
and getting that message out there more than I've seen a message like that be out there in past election cycles. Do you think that this is going to impact people's votes?
I stumbled across a thread on Reddit yesterday where somebody who was relatively new, the Worcester subreddit, someone who was relatively new to the city of Worcester, um, was asking like, wait, like, why is this conversation happening like around taxes? And was asking for them to lay it out, like,
Yeah.
and this person basically like, I'm new here, so like, just help me work this through. But from what I see, and they totally nailed it, was like, so if I pay higher property taxes, like I would conceivably get better schools and have better city services. And if we were paying lower business taxes, maybe I wouldn't have to drive to Boston every day for work. And that was like this person's take on things. Like, tell me I'm wrong. And it was nice to see all these people jump into the thread saying, "No, you're actually right." But like, this is also the perennial argument that boorish Worcester people love to have, which is that like pitting two sides against each other and framing our whole cultural narrative around the idea that business is bad and robbing you and homeowners need a break. I don't think people really care as much. I think this is a great example of an area where politicians and they're really, really tight hangers on are fighting a war that most people in Worcester, kind of like religion, like most people are saying, like, yeah, I don't really care. It's because they kind of get it, right? Like it's one of the things that is keeping us devalued as a region are these extraordinarily high business taxes that make it difficult for large businesses to come to Worcester, which would then conceivably make the economy more vibrant and then afford you to be paying less in personal property taxes because you had a more vibrant economy. I don't think anyone really cares other than the people who have dug their heels in so deeply. And it's comical this year. I mean, like over in Tatnick, there's a couple people who have custom made lawn signs basically saying Tony Economou equals extra $800 in your property taxes.
Yes.
Like, really? Like you've done that math, right? Because like we as a city we haven't done the math yet. It's great that you've got this.
Honestly,
Like,
let me just say that considering the city has something like what $500 million a year annual budget, $600 million a year
sure,
annual
yeah.
budget, $800 is not that much.
Well, but I mean, so
If
this
he's only going to raise property tax, that's not going to pay for anything, Brendan. That's going to pay for like one more trash can.
wait, we don't
Anyway,
even. Yeah,
anyway,
I thought we were doing bags. I thought you were a fan of bags. Now
it's
you
going to
want
pay for.
trash
I'm just
cans?
talking
No, but
municipal whatever.
yeah, I know. And I'm I think the real problem though is, and maybe this is what our elected officials that have been around too long are missing, like how many people are living at 145 Front Street or any of the newer buildings that we've put up for housing, right? Like, they're not all from here. There are people moving here. And I feel we're running a risk that we just saw in a primary with 4% of the city population coming out to vote. The best estimate I've seen for the general election is around 10%, right? Like, so you are now fighting tooth and nail for something that the 90% of your constituents believe is completely irrelevant, right? Like, go back to Christianity. Like, Christianity is having a panic attack because they've dropped 10% from over the last 20 years in terms of participation. In Worcester, you've dropped down like 90% in participation in terms of politics. And like everyone's just kind of looking at you like, dude, what are you guys even talking about? Like, we're out here living our lives, and you folks are having the same argument you've been having since Jordan Levy was mayor. And the taxes thing is a nonsense argument. It makes no sense to anyone who's just coming here. And as the face of the city changes, if anything else, you keep talking about a post-Catholic Worcester. This is another prime example of us entering a post-political Worcester, where like City Hall is forced itself to become the marginalized, irrelevant entity in the city that is basically a crazy person in the corner talking to themselves.
It's a beautiful building, though.
It is
I
a
mean,
wonderful building.
I'll say this. I'll say
Tiny
this.
suits of armor.
I totally realize why people are concerned about property taxes. And I don't think it's ridiculous. The reason that I have skepticism that this is going to be an important issue is just because I feel like every time people are like, "Oh, the city council gave themselves a raise. Nobody's going to vote in favor of the people who voted themselves a raise because they're a bunch of dirtbags." And then all those people end up being the top vote getters.
Sure.
So I just feel like, yeah, like you said, like not a lot of people are voting. They all kind of vote the same way every time. That's my question. Somebody just says here, here. I don't know whether they're in favor of what you said or what I said. Probably what you said. Anyway, I just think that's interesting. Can we talk about election mailers?
Yeah, let's talk about election mailers.
Because let me tell you something, man.
You got some
one
mail.
thing where there's a lot of money being spent in this city is not on
it's direct
benches
mail.
or whatever. It's on direct mail to my house. So many election mailers. Ooh, this is just like the last 2 days. I want to talk about the election mailer of the year, obviously.
You see the rest of your mailers here?
Yeah.
The
election mailer of the year, obviously, is the famous Donna Calorio mailer. And I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to say things about this that you probably haven't heard because I know the truth about this mailer, or I at least have some good suppositions about this mailer. So this mailer is sort of infamous. This mailer is paid by some sort of PAC group or something. But this mailer is sort of famous just because it misspells Worcester. like basically the biggest place where the word Worcester is in this. It spells it Worcester as in Worcester, which is just like a crazy misspelling that I don't think anybody who even grew up in Worcester would ever make that misspelling, because nobody ever mispronounces Worcester, Worcester in the city.
Right.
Nobody would, but that's just like, whatever. Obviously you outsource this. That just basically says like you had some random Pakistani dude on Fiverr make this
Sure.
flyer for you. That's the kind of person who makes that. Whatever. That kind of error is whatever. That's just somebody not whatever, just making a random error that people make. This is kind of like, for me, the more intense error, which is this little 5 on 5th, because, oh man, am I going to have to find my paper here? Let me find my paper.
The thing about Worcester too, though, is that, I mean, that is how, if you've ever had to speak to like a customer service person or something on the phone, and you give them your address, like that's how they pronounce it back to you. Like, but it's not because, and I'm sure it's what happened here as well. It's not because people intentionally hate our nonsense spelling of our city. It's because no spell check in the history of mankind has ever contained the proper spelling of Worcester. I think Google does it now and they're autocorrect. But for years, it would be like if you were on a terminal and you were entering in an address, it would respell Worcester or Worcester as Worcester, because
So let's talk about this
That's
5,
not-
because this is the core of my argument. So you see that this 5 is like comes down a little bit below the line, and I see how people on Facebook talking about this as a subscript 5.
been drinking.
It's not a subscript 5; it's a lowercase 5. Like there's basically 2 different ways you can do your numerals. One is that they're all basically the same height. These would be sort of this is essentially the effect of being uppercase, and this is what we normally do, or what we're normally used to seeing when we type them in. And the fact that you have a number in the middle of your paragraph that's all in uppercase is sort of like, in some ways, it's like typing it all in uppercase letters, like 1984.
Yeah.
But it's not such a big deal. We're used to it. We get over it. But if you're kind of classy, or for a long time, we've also had this sort of more lowercase type of numerals that we can do. And you see here, like, most of them, a lot of them are sort of written at the same size a lowercase letter would be. Some of them have kind of like something going below, like a G would have.
That's confusing to me.
Something coming below like a T. But you see this a lot of times. Some things automatically do this. And you see this in plenty of publications, especially publications that are a little fussy about typography. You absolutely see this.
That seems like the kind of numerals that an NPR host would probably put on their CV.
Happiness Pony exclusively uses this. The New Yorker is 100% about this. But again, this is like basically uppercase versus lowercase numerals. Nothing wrong one way or the other. Except here you have on Tuesday, November, this is all uppercase. This whole headline is uppercase. And then suddenly use a lowercase 5 out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
This is called being a pretentious ass.
Yeah.
This is not where you use it. Did you just do like a bad find and replace? And this is why I look at this flyer and I'm like, this flyer wants to make me think it just has some dumb errors.
Yeah.
But both having an error of being sloppy and unconcerned and an error of being a pretentious ass, these cannot exist so close on one flyer. This is a put-up job. This is brilliant. This is a thing which is designed to basically, because this is somebody, I'm not going to say it's the Clorio campaign, because this is by an outside political action committee. This is somebody at this PAC or somebody saying, listen, social media is where it's at. Social media is how the word gets out there, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's kind of in their own little social media bubble. So like if you're the kind of person who's going to vote for Donna, you're seeing a bunch of people saying nice things about Donna. Great. That doesn't really
Changes nothing.
Changes nothing. And vice versa. If you're not a person not going to vote about Donna, none of your people are talking about Donna. You're not even aware Donna is alive. Changes nothing. But if we can get your people to start talking about Donna,
talking about her a lot, and talking about her in the context of something that is mostly trivial, right?
Like this is not like a property tax thing. This is not like Donna Clorio has some abhorrent view on something or a bad political whatever. This is like there's a typo on her flyer.
Yeah.
And it is hilarious, especially together. This to me is fascinating typographically.
This election cycle brought to you by the letter H and the number 5.
But it's just, anyway, this is just, suddenly our number of Facebook viewers skyrocket because somebody in the city of Worcester is telling the truth, Brendan.
You're
Let me
being
tell
honest
you,
for once.
Of the pundits in the city of Worcester, how many of them were right about the Iraq War from the very beginning? Not a lot
Just
of them.
one.
Not a lot of them. Why do you trust those people as pundits? Those people were wrong about the biggest public policy thing in America of the past 1 to 2 generations. I'm telling you something else, man.
No,
This is
I
smart.
think you're spot on with that too, and it
And
is.
every campaign should start doing this. It's so easy to do.
It's genius marketing, and the beautiful thing to tie that together is the labeling on everything. It's independent voice, right? Like everything
Yes.
is independent. Don is a member of the Worcester Republican City Committee,
Oh,
right? Like, so I mean, that's what you're doing by calling attention to this, right? And everybody that hopped online and to make a mockery of the letter H and whatnot, you actually did the work of this pack by making sure everybody in the city saw it. Like, nobody saw this. I can see you got 17 copies of Donna's mailings. That's
yes.
probably because there are people in your house who are unregistered, right? So they went to independent voters. Like,
Yeah.
whatever the cost was on this, the people who went bonkers over that letter H actually amplified the value of this mailing exponentially to a point that they wouldn't have been able to afford to get it in front of that many people. Like, you did the work, and it's
It
genius
is.
marketing.
I mean, let me ask you, how many city council candidates have we talked about on this episode of 508 so far?
That one, but
Just
we're
the
we're
one,
going
a
to talk
week
about
before
one
the
more.
election.
My buddy Mo, look at this. I mean, this is
He
genius
is your
too.
friend at City Hall,
Yeah, no, but I mean,
according to his flyers.
yeah. So yeah, look at that guy with the taxes down. I mean, I had no idea all these sewer lines and water lines that keep bursting all over the city of Worcester. It's because the residential tax monster
Yeah.
is underground, and the only thing controlling him is this strapping young Mo from the
it's
North High football team.
it's labeled residential taxes, but honestly, I think it would be a little more hilarious and get him a few more Gen X votes if it was labeled Chud. But
No, you did miss an opportunity that should have been the clown from
from it.
from it. Yeah, that should have that would have been the
This
home
is
run.
actually true. This looks like Oscar the Grouch.
Yeah.
Dude, Mo Bergman, why are you stepping? This legitimately looks like Oscar. Why are you, Mo Bergman? You look like you're tough. First of all, you're not ripped like that. There's no way in hell.
That Mo, that's exactly what Mo looks like. Mo is the captain of the North High football team,
And here he is killing Oscar, everybody's favorite.
But the son is happy. Look how happy that son is.
The
up
son
there.
has a smirk. The son has a sort of a superior
Son
smirk
knows
on its
what's
face.
up.
That son is not a good son. Boy, we're anyway. Let's talk about flashlights.
This is before flashlights. Again, love you, Tony, but I know people panic about the ballots, right? Like, so Mo is all about like, I'm number 11, like, which is never something you actually advertise, right? Like, I'm number 1 is a
Yes.
big one, like close second, like whatever. Those are all, but like, people are so worried in this city that you're not going to be seen. Actually, right here, there's the ballot, but like, Tony, he's giving you instructions. Like, look, please make sure this is an important one.
use
Make
a
sure
pen.
color inside the lines. This is
Don't color outside the bubble.
no big X. This is what we're doing. And you know what? I'm gonna bet a lot of people show up and they only half fill the bubble because Tony said so.
I look at stuff like this and I do sort of wonder, like, to what extent is this Mo just saying, like, I mean, vote number 11, like, I'm number 11. Is there a certain, subconscious, especially with about 5 people voting, is this impacting one of these 5 people to make them think that? I also think this vis-a-vis Tracy Novick. I was definitely talking to a voter the other day who was complaining to me, like, well, Tracy sued the city and won. And, they were sort of still seething about this. I don't know if this is somebody who would vote for Tracy anyway, but I always think about that and I think, is suing the city and winning like a negative, or is it actually a positive? Because what people remember from that conversation is not sued the city, but they remember the second clause and won.
And won.
Like, let me tell you, there's a lot of people here voting for a lot of stuff, and they sued a lot of people. And are they winners?
Yeah.
Come on. There's one winner for sure. Somebody who won in court where it counts.
Yeah. What else you got?
Oh, Brandon, I got flashlights. Let's look at these flashlights. This is finally something relevant to the viewer at home. EDC. We don't have any machetes this week, but we have some flashlights.
We need better guests if we're gonna have a machete. I don't know if there's any guests we have had, but we need special guests if we're gonna do machetes.
I loaned my favorite flashlight to some friends for a home birth, and the home birth went great, and the kid is a great kid, but the flashlight got lost, so I had to get some other flashlights to see what would work for me. So this flashlight, I'm super excited about this. I got this a deal on this used. This is a Surefire Stiletto. This is obviously, as you can just see from looking at it, a tactical flashlight.
Yeah.
But this flashlight I'm into. Like, it has, I'll shine it behind us so we don't blind anything. Like, it sort of has, like a low, medium, and a fairly bright high.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is it has like a thumb button on the high.
Yep.
And it just reliably like shoots that light out there. And honestly, 99% of the time, this is what I need. Like, at one of my volunteer deals, one of the things is to like lock up the dumpster area at the middle at the end of the night, and it's a dark night, and there's people around who might be using opioids because of the decline of religiosity in Worcester County, And like one thing you have to do is you just have to look behind the dumpster and before you lock up that enclosure. Say, is there somebody who's like, nodding off out here or whatever the heck you call it, and potentially having an overdose back here because that would be a
Or
disaster.
someone
That
could
would
be
be a
going to the
nightmare.
bathroom behind the
Or they,
dumpster, and you don't
right,
want to
are you
step
just
in that.
trapping some
That's
person who's in the middle using the restroom and suddenly they're locked in a cage? That's crazy. So this is perfect because you can just pull out your pocket real easy. It's got a nice pocket clip, and then you're just like super bright light
yeah.
just for the 2 seconds you need it, wherever you need it. Nobody's back there. Great, we're
And
good.
Surefire too.
And Surefire.
It's a
So
good brand.
again, good brand, very tactical. So this flashlight, on the other hand, and this flashlight is by a company called Lumentop, and I think that they basically crowdsourced the design for this like on Reddit or some other forum. They were
Okay.
just like, "All right, super flashlight nerds, what do you want for this, that, and the other thing?" So it has like this open source, community created UI and whatever. It's sort of it's it's I would say it's not a tactical flashlight because it has one button
Mm-hmm.
and it has a billion different modes that it can get into, including
yeah.
one amazingly called Muggle mode. And so like the reliability of just being like, is there somebody behind the dumpster? Is not so much there with this flashlight.
That one,
But
it's going to do
it's
put on
reasonably
a light show.
it's reasonably bright, and the high on this is
Jeez.
like nuts. Like again, like here's the high on
Yeah.
this versus the high on this, which is already like a freaking bright flashlight. Actually, on the screen they look reasonably similar,
There's a
but
difference.
in
though.
reality they're definitely different.
Yeah.
I mean, like where's like there it is. Like I can just erase things from our background with the brightness of this light. Anyway, there's my little EDC of the week. Yeah, like this Lumentop one is very interesting. If you want to play with it, you know how to get a hold of me because of Facebook and whatever. Just talk to me, and you can definitely play with this because this is what I'm all about. Is this tactical? Because my life is all about tactics.
It is. Not giving up on strategy, just going straight in on tactics now. I carried a flashlight similar to this, at least size wise, for years, and it just got to be unwieldy. It was. I moved over to this little one from Olight. That it's I think the battery's dying, so it's actually much brighter than that's sad compared to what yours was doing.
I mean, I charged
it's,
these up specifically for this show. So.
Yeah, no, and that just reminded me. I need a, but I don't use flashlights much anymore.
Yeah.
Olight is actually a really great brand. It's they wide range of products, and they're not too expensive. But I mean, I kind of like the just
What kind of battery? What kind of battery is
It's
that?
a AAA in there. I believe it's a AAA.
I do like the AAA.
Yeah, I think it's a AAA, but it might be double. But I think it's AAA.
Yeah, AAA.
But it's been a great light, and except it doesn't when it's got a fresh battery. It's a great light.
Yeah,
Because
well,
now
yeah.
it's not actually a flashlight. Now it's just like a small aluminum tube that I could probably throw at somebody if I needed to. But
Yeah.
we'll put a new battery in it.
Yeah. Anyway, well, there's flashlights for you people. Knives are harder and harder to carry in the modern world, but you can still definitely carry a flashlight. And boy, if you have this flashlight, you can definitely like boil water with this flashlight
You know what I
eventually.
would love from our viewers?
Yes.
Professional opinions on the legality of automatic knives in Massachusetts. That's all. It's really hard to figure out, to suss out. Like
I think they're not legal.
so it seems my reading of the MGL is carrying them might not be, but I can't really find anything that says like owning them is illegal.
So you could strap one to your dog and
No, I mean
John Wick style.
you can keep one at your house just in case
Yeah.
of emergencies or something. It's yeah.
Well, guys, all of our Facebook viewers have disappeared again because we're just talking about nonsense. So, unsurprisingly, guys, it's always great to talk to people. It's
been real.
Good luck on the election. I mean, we always endorse candidates this year, so I'll just say you should vote for all challengers. You have any more sophisticated endorsement than that?
No,
I mean, we always say it. In some weeks, some years we spend half an hour going through hilariously figuring out why we would endorse every single person on the ballot, but. This year, I'm like, just vote for some challengers. Just mix it up a bunch. There's a couple outliers on the ballot who are probably, and to the extent that there's some political outliers on the ballot, if they get elected, great. Add a little diversity to the deal. It just seems like I don't know.
Why not?
In some ways I feel positive about this. I feel like we've got whatever, 20 people running for each of these offices or something like that. And 10 or 20, and it's a good group of people.
Try something new.
There's nobody's there who's in there. I mean, you got people like Bill Coleman. Like the person who potentially going to get the least votes is one of the greatest people who could be running, Bill Coleman. So like no disaster is going to come out of this group of people.
The
Let me put it
best
that way.
thing that I've seen in this election cycle, and here we're going to be in negative viewers now, has been Bill.
The number of viewers shot up when I mentioned Bill Coleman.
Has been Bill. Bill has been going through his archives of photographs of like that he's taken with other politicians and people like throughout the years and whatnot, and putting them up on social media. But they're not like they're non-descriptive. So it's it'll be a picture of him with somebody from like 20 years ago, and it looks very much like an endorsement. But it's not an endorsement. Like it's just a
Right,
picture you
right.
took 20 years ago, and it's another one that I think is oddly genius. That is I don't know. I haven't seen anybody really comment on it. That there's nothing. It's just photographs, but you're in the middle of a campaign. So when you put when you put something out there during a campaign,
You're like,
people are
wait a
going to
second, Richard
interpret that
Nixon.
as
I thought he
a
was dead. Bill Coleman. How's he
yes,
endorsing you
I
for
was
city
on the
council?
trail with you. That's yeah, no, it's he's been doing a really good job of but also going deep with his time involved with civic life here in Worcester, which
I'll
is
just say this because we talked trash about Bill Coleman on the very first episode of this show. So I'll talk negative, reverse trash about him here. This is my final comment for today. Is just if for some reason the election commission makes a last minute decision that we've been interpreting our election rules all wrong, and that in fact you could vote the same person like 6 times for city council and 6 times for school committee. If that happens, that person should be Bill Coleman. That's my belief. Worcester, thanks for watching this program. That's all for this episode. We'll see you next time. And remember, you can bench more than you think you can. I'm happy with that as a sign off.